Hello everyone and welcome to another video. I need to make a confession. I've never warmed up to the idea of owning a tablet. I've had an iPad Pro in the past and I still have a cheap tablet that's collecting dust in my drawer, but honestly, I never understood the point of them. That being said, last year I wanted to get something to take notes on and do basic day-to-day stuff with, and I realized that I mainly had two options: the iPad Pro and whatever the flagship Samsung tablet is. Then I came across a hidden third option, the Microsoft Surface Pro 11. It costs the same as an iPad Pro and it runs Windows 11 with an asterisk, so it seemed like the obvious choice. But how does it hold after a year of daily use? The one I have here is the base model with a 13-inch display, a Snapdragon X Plus processor, 16GB of RAM, and 256GB of SSD storage. The 13-inch display has a resolution of 2880 by 1920, an aspect ratio of 3:2, and a refresh rate of 120Hz. It's a touchscreen and it also works with the Surface Pen. The base model, so the one that I have, has an LCD screen, whereas the higher-end models come with an OLED screen. The LCD has a peak brightness of 600 nits, while the OLED is at 900 nits. In terms of design, well, it looks like an iPad from 2017. The bezels are on the thinner side, but the tablet itself is quite thick. I think it still looks great for a Windows tablet though. It also has a built-in stand, which is a nice plus. In terms of buttons, we have a power button and two volume buttons. Pretty normal for a tablet. When I first got this Pro, I got it as a whole kit with a keyboard and a Surface Pen. Here's a hot tip: don't pay full price for those. You can find them brand new on Facebook Marketplace for around half the price. The material quality is pretty good. There is very little chassis and screen flex, and it doesn't seem like the stand will break anytime soon. Underneath the stand, there is a small door that allows you to access the SSD. The keyboard also feels great to the touch since it has this Alcantara-like feel to it, but there is just way too much flex. In terms of ports, we have two USB 4 ports and a Surface Connect port. In the box, you get a charger that uses the Surface Connect port and is magnetically attached just like MagSafe. However, if I had to pick between MagSafe and this connector, I would definitely go for MagSafe. The Surface Connect port unlatches way too easily, in my opinion. When you turn on the tablet for the first time, the setup process is pretty much the same as any other Windows computer. And once you're done setting it up, you'll see that the interface is the exact same as well. However, this isn't the same Windows 11 that you would get on a regular computer. Since the Pro 11 has an ARM processor, it runs Windows 11 ARM. ARM processors are similar to the ones that you'd find on your smartphone, so they're a fair bit different from regular computer processors. This means that not all Windows programs are compatible with this tablet. Apple did this back in 2020, and although they've also had some compatibility issues back in the day, they handled the transition fairly well. But Apple controls their ecosystem, so it was rather easy for them. Since Windows now has to support both x86 and ARM64 architectures, it's up to the app developers to decide if/when they want to introduce ARM support. So let's see how Windows 11 ARM does on this tablet. The interface is the same as any other Windows computer, so it doesn't take long to get used to it. In terms of app compatibility, you have a bunch of apps that are natively compatible with the processor on this tablet, and for the apps that aren't compatible, there's an emulator. Basic programs like Google Chrome, WhatsApp, and the Microsoft Office suite are natively compatible, whereas stuff like Apple Music and the Adobe suite run on an emulator. If a program runs on an emulator, it will run fine, albeit a bit slower than it normally would. The touchscreen works much better than you'd think on Windows 11. It's definitely not as easy to use as an iPad or an Android tablet, but it still works just fine. If you don't have the keyboard attached to the tablet, the taskbar and the buttons will get slightly larger. This makes the interface fairly touchscreen friendly. And even when you have a keyboard attached, the touchscreen works fine. Most of the modern Windows apps are touchscreen friendly, but apps like the Microsoft Office suite will still need you to use a mouse and a keyboard. Speaking of the keyboard, the on-screen keyboard isn't the best. Autocorrect doesn't work all too well, and all in all, I just don't think it's great. The Surface Pen on the other hand is quite nice. I like it better than the Apple Pencil since this has a soft tip, so it feels more like writing on a piece of paper. You can also use the top part as an eraser. Palm rejection when drawn on the screen is quite good as well, and I genuinely have no complaints there. If you have a Surface tablet and if you want to get one of those cheap pens off Amazon, just don't. They work fine for a day or two, but then they start acting up. You're better off getting a real Surface Pen from Facebook Marketplace. Alright, so for daily tasks, as long as you're okay with using a mouse and a keyboard, the Pro 11 does much better than an iPad or an Android tablet simply because it runs Windows. Multitasking is also so much easier. I use VS Code for my job, and I honestly haven't seen any performance difference between this tablet and my regular computer. If I had a non-Windows tablet, I wouldn't be able to do this. And I genuinely don't want to pay $1,000 for a device that won't allow me to do work. What other apps do I regularly use on a computer? Chrome, VLC, 7-Zip, Zoom, WhatsApp, and Telegram are all natively compatible with Windows on ARM, so those apps work perfectly. I also use NordVPN every now and then, and they recently introduced ARM support, so that's a nice plus. There's also a Netflix app available, but it's essentially just the Netflix website wrapped in an app. It used to be so that you could download shows and movies so you could watch them on a plane, for example, but not anymore. An iPad or even a $100 Android tablet will let you do this. It's a somewhat different experience when you use it as a tablet though. The interface is touch optimized on the Surface, but within minutes you'll realize that it's still very much cursor oriented. On any other tablet, you would have an app for whatever it is you want to do. Here on the other hand, you'll need to use a browser, and desktop websites aren't really optimized for touchscreens. It has Windows Hello facial recognition, which is Microsoft's take on Face ID. I first tried it out when I had a Surface Go back in the day, and it was borderline unusable. But this one works much better. It takes a while for it to start looking for a face, but once it does, it's fairly quick to unlock your device or autofill your password. It's also angle agnostic, so it'll work at any angle, which is a nice plus. That being said, there have been times where the facial recognition just wouldn't start looking for a face. In that case, you can cancel whatever it is you're trying to do and try again, and it will work. This is not something that would happen on an iPad. It has two cameras. The front-facing camera is 5 megapixels and it can record video at 1440p. While that's great in theory, Microsoft took the fantastic decision of going for a wide-angle camera. So it's almost like you're filming a video at 0.5x. I've been in Zoom calls on this tablet and I've had people ask me what's wrong with my webcam, so I'm not a huge fan of this. It also has a 12 megapixel rear camera and I think I've used it pretty much once in the last year. That's all I can say about it. I mentioned earlier that I got the Surface keyboard, which also has a built-in touchpad. It doesn't have any USB ports, nor does it have an integrated battery, but it does have a place for you to store and charge your pen. You can set the keyboard at an angle or keep it flat. When the keyboard is at an angle, the flex is almost unbearable. It's fine for sending quick messages here and there, but if you want to write a long email or an article, you'll wish you had an external keyboard. For what it's worth though, the keyboard is backlit and there is a function button that switches between the F keys and the multimedia keys. The trackpad is great, although it's on the smaller side. Sometimes the auto rotation doesn't work. The solution is either to put the Surface keyboard on or to restart the device. However, by far the most annoying thing about this tablet is the sleep mode. Sometimes I lock the tablet and try to wake up within a couple minutes just to realize that it turned itself off. So I need to wait for it to boot, and if I'm lucky enough, the apps that I had open beforehand will be there. This most probably has to do with the ARM integration, and it might be fixed in a future software update. Okay, so although there is a significant amount of apps that work natively on ARM, why would Microsoft even bother switching? This is where the biggest advantage of ARM kicks in: efficiency. I rarely plug my tablet in and the battery easily lasts over 13 hours. This wasn't really possible with the older Surface Pros. Not only that, it's also much quieter than the older Intel-based Surface Pros. In terms of performance, I could run a bunch of benchmarks and tell you the results, but they don't mean much for a device like this. In reality, this device is plenty quick for the things that it's designed for. I have the base model, which has a processor that's pretty much on par with the Apple M2 Pro. Overall, who is this device for? In my opinion, the Surface Pro 11 directly competes with the iPad Pro. For years, I wished Apple came out with a macOS powered iPad. To be perfectly honest, I'd rather not pay $1,000 for a device that can't run VS Code. The Pro 11 can do most of the things that an iPad does, and the experience is good enough. It can also do most things that a regular laptop would do, and once again, the experience is good enough. So despite the bugs, I think the Surface Pro 11 is currently the best tablet on the market. Thank you so much for watching. Please consider liking this video, checking out my other videos, and subscribing to my channel. Take care.